I love that. Like, go 100 episodes, and we were like, screw it, let's just do it last minute. Like, yeah, it's fine, whatever. Like weeks of planning for 2 other weeks. You know what we should do?
Yeah. We got an hour. Let's do it.
Fuck it. Let's do it live.
Do it live.
Stand by. Going to air.
Stand by, Phil.
5,
Stand by music.
4,
Stand by now.
3, 2, 1.
And fade up.
All aboard!
And a name on the front is a hell of a lot more important than the one on the back.
Don't act like you're not impressed.
Turn to page 394.
How much you want to make a bet I can throw a football over the mountain?
That is so fetch.
Dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dive.
The power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
Where's my super suit?
Hey, Fat Lard, come get some dinner.
Well,
I am not drinking any f***ing Merlot.
And I'm gonna try to forget the fact that you're a girl.
But dogs can look up.
Oh, durga.
you tell me what I saw this woman?
This is the Polar Express.
All right, well, welcome everyone to a brand new, monumentally important episode of 20 Years, 4 Beers. We are a podcast dedicated to rewatching movies from at least 2 decades ago, while simultaneously enjoying a minimum of 4 modern beers. My name is Steve, and this is my big brother,
Tim.
and we are coming to you from just outside Minneapolis, Minnesota. As mentioned, this is a very special episode because we are, you, our dear listeners, are listening to our 100th episode. Hard to believe that we're here, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been, going good for a while, but when we first started, I'm sure that was not part of our thought process.
No.
We aren't going to wax poetic or anything like that at the moment. Maybe later when we have a few beers in us.
Yeah.
We'll have a toast later and kind of do that. But in this episode, we will be rewatching what many people believe to be a top 5 superhero film of all time in 2004's Spider-Man 2. Before we start, though, we typically take a few minutes to discuss any new movies or television that we have watched recently. I have one, but you have a couple TV shows, right?
Correct.
Okay, why don't you go first?
So speaking of superhero items that are very, very good.
Yep.
Finally worked through later segments in the Marvel Cinematic Universe with the kids. And we just finished recently Loki Season 2.
Yeah.
And it's hard to describe how great it is.
Yeah.
I know you had seen it before, and I think you talked about an episode. Holy cow. To see where the characters come in the stories, but also just the production value, the quality. It was fantastic. Very, very impressed with it. Kids loved it, and I thought they would have their brain melted, but they were able to keep up with it, so it was awesome.
And they do such a good job of making it be a second, or like a different...
Like a bookend to the first
one. It's a continuation, but it's a very different feel. Yes. One of the best endings of television. And I love that they're just like, we're going to do 2. And maybe there's a 3rd one down the road if they come up with a good reason. But the way they shifted, and I think they shifted to end it this way because the whole controversy or the whole issue with Jonathan Majors.
Yes.
So they kind of had to shore up that a little bit to be able to have a believable way of not doing Kang.
Yes.
But we'll kind of leave it at that from a spoiler standpoint. It's recent enough. But if you like any of those shows... Yeah. Loki 2 is outstanding.
I think it's like probably the best one.
Of the 2? Oh, of all the shows, yes. Anything that has more than one season, I would agree.
Yeah.
Which is only a couple. So probably it's still the best.
Yeah, it's really good. And then speaking of enjoyable things that started that way, but then went very differently. Apple TV's Manhunt.
Sure.
We watched that. And for a huge fan of the original book of the 12 Days.
It's like one of your favorite books,
it was like
right?
2005. Incredible. Yeah. Amazing book. It read like an action film of the detail that this historian found of how they tracked and caught Booth 12 days after he killed Lincoln. So when it came out, I was so excited. And I admit I probably had too high of expectations. But man, it started great. And then every episode just got diminished and diminished. Like we actually probably got done with the series a month or so after we probably took a break. We're like, I guess we should probably finish it.
I waited Yep.
So if you have any interest or something about hard pass, I was so disappointed.
It's not like so. Masters of the Air is one that I would say watch it. Like maybe people were disappointed with it, but I would say watch it. If not, the spectacle is great. The story's good enough. You know what I mean? Like the acting's still good.
Yeah.
Manhunt. I just would not even. There's nothing about it that I would be like,
no.
Oh yeah, the production's good, I guess, and the acting's fine, but it's really cheesy. It's historically inaccurate at best.
Yes.
Or it's sketchy in a lot of it. And then they expand on some characters that they have no knowledge of whatsoever happened. Yep. It makes no sense. I was really frustrated. I haven't read the book and I want to read the book.
Yeah.
So this actually makes me want to read the book more.
Because they shoehorned in this whole like larger conspiracy and really had it feel like this critique on our current state of the politics and like January 6th, like, what do we do with this insurrection? It was so like, just tell the damn story. So, so upset. What'd you watch?
The only thing I watched is because I mentioned it a few times before is, I watched other things, but Hundreds of Beavers right. Man, I don't know how to describe the movie. It's really, like, if you see the trailer, it's exactly what you see in the trailer. It is a homage to airplane style movies or Naked Gun for sure. Tons of Naked Gun, like random, not in content, but just in joke style.
Okay.
Like the style of the jokes, they're random, they're out of nowhere. At the beginning there's a musical number, so you definitely get this Cannibal the Musical feel to it, like this really weird indie film. I think he made it for like $500,000, which seems like a lot of money because it's still $500,000. But you make a feature film for $500,000.
Yeah.
He's fighting rabbits. These are adults in rabbit costumes and beavers in beaver costumes. And yeah, it's really unique. You got to watch it, but you got to have some booze or weed in your system.
Yeah.
And that's not a critique at all. It's just a zany movie. And if you go like knowing that, like it's not a modern style comedy. There's nothing like it that's been released in the last 20, 30 years. And I know they're redoing Naked Gun now or whatever. It's just not going to work.
Oh, no.
Anyway, I did love it. There's a few other things I watched and but nothing that I want to talk about here. So
nice. Yeah, I gotta check it out.
All right. Well, as mentioned, we are going to rewatch Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. The movie is a continuation of the Spider-Man trilogy. We did watch the first one on this show, so go back and listen to that. And this movie follows Spider-Man, a.k.a. Peter Parker, as he has now entered college. Peter's personal relationships are struggling since his best friend Harry believes Spider-Man killed his father, and the love of his life, Mary Jane, is starting to suspect that there is a connection between Peter and Spider-Man. At the same time, Spider-Man must face another mentor turned villain in Doc Ock, or Dr. Octavius. Things are not exactly great for the webbed wonder. The film is directed by Sam Raimi, written by Steve Ditko and Alfred Goff, and stars Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst, James Franco, Alfred Molina, and features Rosemary Harris and J.K. Simmons.
It's all over town, Robbie. Gossip, rumors, panic in the streets. We're lucky. Crazy scientist turns himself into some kind of a monster. 4 mechanical arms welded right onto his body. Guy named Otto Octavius winds up with 8 limbs. What are the odds? Hoffman!
Yeah?
What are we gonna call this guy?
Dr. Octopus.
That's crap.
Science Squid?
Crap.
Doctor Strange.
That's pretty good. But it's taken. Wait, I got it. Dr. Octopus.
But I like it.
Of course you do. Dr. Octopus. New villain in town. Doc Ock.
Genius.
What, are you looking for a raise? Get out.
Chief, I found Parker.
Where you been? Looking for you all morning. Why don't you pay your phone bill? Mad scientist goes berserk and we don't have pictures.
I heard Spider-Man was there.
Where were you? Photographing squirrels? You're fired.
Chief, the planetarium party.
Oh, right. You're unfired. I need you. Come here. What do you know about high society?
Oh, well,
Don't answer that. My society photographer got hit in the head by a polo ball. You're all I got. Big party for an American hero. My son, the astronaut.
Could you pay me in advance?
You serious? Pay you for what? Standing there? The planetarium tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. There's the door.
If you guys were the inventors of Facebook, you'd have invented Facebook.
This is a social network.
You don't have to be an intellectual property expert to understand the difference between right and wrong.
Where we take a look back at the critical and fan reception from 2 decades ago.
Mark!
As usual, Tim takes point on this, so take it away, Tim.
You better lawyer up, asshole, because I'm not coming back for 30%. I'm coming back for everything.
$1 billion.
The IMDb rating is 7.5 out of 10, which is solid, but admittedly for the quality of the film, seems kind of higher.
Yeah,
seems kind of low.
Yep.
Christy Lemire, or Lemire, not sure of the Associated Press, said the web-slinging sequences are bigger, better, brighter, faster than the already spectacular ones in 2002's Spider-Man. And at the same time, the film's smaller emotional moments are denser, richer, and more resonant than those in the first. Lisa Schwartzbaum of Entertainment Weekly said this triumphant sequel to the hard-to-top 2002 original may be the first great comic book movie in the age of self-help and CGI wizardry, an entertainment in which both the thrills and the therapeutic personal growth are well-earned. And Roger Ebert, care to guess what he gave it?
I mean, I would think 3.5.
4 out of 4.
Wow. All right.
Yeah. Said Spider-Man 2 is the best superhero movie since the modern genre was launched with Superman in 1978. It succeeds by being true to the insight that allowed Marvel Comics to upturn decades of comic book tradition, namely that it wasn't that Spider-Man could swing from skyscrapers that won over the readers. It was that he fretted about personal problems in the thought balloons above his Spidey face mask. Spider-Man 2 is in a completely different category than others recently out there. It's a real movie, full-blooded and smart, with qualities even for those who have no idea who Stan Lee is, which is kind of weird to think about how prevalent and ubiquitous he was now in the later movies. It's a superhero movie for people who don't go to superhero movies, and for those who do, it's the one they've been yearning for. And that year, Oscar nominations, it was up for 3 Academy Awards in sound mixing and sound editing that it was nominated, and then it won for Best Visual Effects.
Well, there we go. We are going to pause and rewatch the movie. If you are so inclined, go right ahead and watch along with us. If not, we will see you on the other side of this break. Here now is Spider-Man 2.
You take Spider-Man's pictures, right?
I used to.
Where is he?
Henry and I agree. We don't see his picture in the paper anymore.
He, quit.
Why?
Wanted to try other things.
He'll be back, right?
I don't know.
You'll never guess who he wants to be. Spider-Man.
Why?
Well, he knows a hero when he sees one. Too few characters out there flying around like that, saving old girls like me. And Lord knows, kids like Henry need a hero. Courageous, self-sacrificing people, setting examples for all of us. Everybody loves a hero. People line up for them, cheer them, scream their names, and years later they'll tell how they stood in the rain for hours just to get a glimpse of the one who taught him to hold on a second longer. I believe there's a hero in all of us that keeps us honest, gives us strength, makes us noble, and finally allows us to die with pride, even though sometimes we have to be steady and give up the thing we want the most. Even our dreams. Spider-Man did that for Henry, and he wonders where he's gone. He needs him.
Okay, well, welcome back to 20 Years, 4 Beers, where we have just finished rewatching Spider-Man 2, and have also had 4 new beers that we will review in a segment coming up. But first, we begin our discussion with our reaction segment that we call Spotlight.
This is Boston. and the church does not want them to be found. So, they are not there.
This is where we highlight and discuss our top takeaways of any kind from rewatching our subject film.
We've got two stories here. We've got a story about degenerate clergy, and we've got a story about a bunch of lawyers turning child abuse into a cottage industry.
If there were 90 of these bastards, people would know.
Maybe they do.
This is Spotlight.
They knew, and they let it happen.
Tim, you want to get us started? What are your first thoughts?
So I last watched this, 2 or 3 years ago. I forget exactly when the kids and I were starting to work through the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yep.
And they were like, well, we actually really, let's go way back to the original Spider-Man and this. And so I know I've watched it within the past.
Yeah, more recent
years.
than me. It's been a while for me.
And I don't know if it was like an appreciation of just like watching it with the kids and like,
sure.
Oh yeah, enjoying it. I gotta say, watching it again, it was a bit of a mixed bag.
Okay.
And so I'll go through maybe the stuff that I enjoyed still.
You can crap on it all you want. That's fine. We're known for being more positive about our movies.
There's some things I was like, yikes. From a sequel standpoint, what I admittedly forgot completely was the great opening credits.
Okay.
Where it's like a bit of a recap.
Sure.
Which we kind of
in like comic book form.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
like just like kind of showing high points of the first film.
Right.
And then it's like a little bit of a voiceover. And so that was I think a really solid choice. You think back to like there weren't that many comic book movies that had done that type of thing. And it was a really nice choice. Like, okay, that's right. But that being said, what I think is a benefit as well as a problem is that the movie takes 34 minutes.
Sure.
I asked you to pause it to see, to establish the world again.
Yeah. To our listeners, that's how long it takes them to go pee. About 30 minutes in.
No.
About 30 minutes
I waited like it was like maybe like an hour. Thank you very much. And so it does a good job, I think, of really kind of not falling into the standard tropes of like action, comic, like all these things. And yet there were times where I was like, this is super slow.
It definitely
really
needed
slow.
I forgot one of the things. I forgot how slow the movie starts.
Yeah.
There's no real like
attention grabber.
Yeah. Because at the beginning, it's not really anything like that. There's no big scene where he's beating up which on one level I appreciate. You don't diminish your audience. You don't just dumb it down for whoever. But it does start really slow. I mean, it does do a good job of rebuilding the world you're in, but it's pretty slow until Doc Ock shows up. And even then, it's a little bit of a drag after that. The first half is a bit of a drag in this movie. I can't deny that.
Absolutely is.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was like a struggle to not watch it, but just like, wow, I held this in such high regard as like a classic comic book. But the first, half hour.
I still do, but yeah.
Sure. It pays off in the end.
Sure.
I'll give it that. But admittedly, the first half of the movie is just really, really, really slow.
Okay.
But here's the thing that, here are some of the things that I appreciate. Appreciate. So the hospital sequence
with the doctors,
so
very horror,
like, but it's like a palatable horror.
Yeah. Yep.
Where it's Sam Raimi, horror director before these.
Yep.
Great vibe, and it has that like horror aspect to it.
Yeah.
But it's not really scary.
No, there's no blood. There's there's screaming,
but I do remember watching with the kids, and they were like just terrified. So it was fun thinking through like how they really appreciated a few years ago, like watching like, oh my gosh, edge of your seat.
Yeah.
But it's well done. It's really well done. And
there's a lot of good sequences actually in this movie.
Yes. And that one is a great one where it's the start of seeing the turn of this like good guy, or at least a decent human being, what it could happen to be when you turn bad, when you're taken over. Like when he's like, no.
Well, that's one of the things about Doc Ock is like, he isn't a bad guy. Doc Ock is not a bad guy.
No.
But the AI that is controlling him is what is actually the bad guy.
Yes.
So it's actually a nice change of pace from a villain standpoint.
Yes, I agree. I got a lot of thoughts on him as a villain, but yes. You can go ahead.
Good or bad?
What?
Wow. All right.
Where does
this took a turn?
Right? Surprising.
Wow.
So where for you in terms of these, and I'm not looking for like a hard fast list, but like where would you put Dr. Octavius in terms of like villains for these?
Here's the thing. I separate the two of these in that Alfred Molina's performance as Doc Ock is different than Doc Ock as a villain.
Okay.
Because Alfred Molina is really good in this movie.
Yes.
He's really good in also No Way Home later on. Like,
True.
His performance, in my opinion, is arguably one of the better performances of villains because it's very nuanced. It is a good guy trying to do good things who then gets sucked into this thing. And like, but Doc Ock, it's like himself as a villain in the movies. Are we talking MCU or are we talking Spider-Man?
MCU.
Oh, I mean, there's 30 villains or whatever it is. I mean, he'd be outside the top 10 for sure.
Yeah.
Doc Ock as a villain is not, because Doc Ock is not in this movie inherently a villain.
Yes.
In the comic books and in the TV shows and things like that, he is actually a villain. And so it just kind of depends. So that's the hard part with this. Because if you're asking me performance wise, there's only a few performances I'd put ahead of Molina's performance.
Yep.
But as an actual villain of a movie, it'd be probably, I guess I could probably list 15 better than him. So probably bottom half. You know, there's a lot of worse than him.
Yes.
But I mean, than Doc Ock. So it'd be down the bottom half.
I was kind of curious, like, watching it and thinking back to when we watched the first movie, and the main criticism I think we both had was, despite Willem Dafoe's solid performance, the character was already like inherently power hungry.
Yeah.
Kind of villainous. Like the turn to a bad guy wasn't that big of a stretch.
Right.
So it felt like okay, that's fine. I agree with much of you're saying. It's the performance of Molina elevates what this.
Yeah, he's got the empathy.
Yes.
And he's not an evil person, so he doesn't have to be. Willem Dafoe, like, is a scary human being just in person. So I mean, like, whereas Molina is so likable.
Yes.
That he would be really bad as this sort of like really evil person making evil decisions.
Yep.
Like, he is not looking to kill people.
Yes.
Except when he's throwing people off the subway train. That's the first time that he really does seem to be dude, you know, but he also, I think, knows like that Spider-Man's going to save these people. This is more of a distraction. It's not to kill these people.
Yeah.
So no, that is where the difference. I'm glad they didn't try and make him worse because it wouldn't have fit.
No.
With Molina.
But it's funny that when I think of, as we were coming to watch this movie again, I was like, oh my gosh, Doc Ock. And maybe I have an appreciation now after Spider-Man No Way Home of almost like a retcon.
There is some retcon stuff. Yeah, for sure.
In a great way.
Yeah.
But it was like watching it being like, meh. I was like, okay. Irrespective of his performance. That it was funny watching it again, thinking when it came out, it was like, Doc Ock is like amazing.
Mm-hmm.
What a great villain. This is so like well-rounded, interesting.
I get what you're saying.
And it just was like, by now I'm like, meh.
See, and I actually take it more as Doc Ock's a perfect villain for this because the point of this movie is not, like, really the point of this movie is about Spider-Man and his journey through. It's not about saving. One of the great things about Spider-Man is it's not about saving the world for the most part. It is always a smaller, relatively smaller villain that he's fighting or whatever. Yep. And this movie is much more about Spider-Man or Peter Parker recognizing the life that he's been given, this sort of like future that he's been given, that actually he's got to go down that way. And so Doc Ock is not an afterthought, but he's not like the story of this really isn't about Doc Ock at all. For the most part, Doc Ock is like a secondary piece to this movie.
Yeah, he's not in it very much.
Right. And so I think in that sense, you benefit from, he doesn't drive the story. He's just a part of the story. And so you don't need a villain that is this big over the top villain. And in fact, none of the villains in most Spider-Man movies are global whatever villains. Like they're much more smaller sort of villains for the most part in the Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, the biggest one that's a stretch of sorts is the Mysterio.
Yes.
Like
that's
like
later on.
Most
Yep.
grandiose. But I
sure.
agree. Most of them are very insular, small scale.
Right. And that
type of,
fits
like,
because Mysterio, it takes place worldwide. Like they're
True.
actually literally around the world.
That's true.
Most everyone else is in New York or whatever. So yeah, I mean, the villain is not the central part of this character, but I think Doc Ock works really well as a villain. I actually think what I've really impressed by is the visual effects of his arms are still really good.
Yep.
Like I mean, some of the visual effects still struggle a little, and we had this with Matrix movies, in particular with
same notes.
the people.
Yes.
Like when all the Smiths and stuff like that were around, it had the same sort of feel.
Plasticky.
Yeah,
Yep.
it just felt like the people were the problem, but everything else from a visual effects standpoint was really good.
Yes.
20 years on. And I can't fault the movie 20 years ago for not being perfect when it comes to humans, because so few movies did a great job with that.
True.
Even the Lord of the Rings had a hard time with the hobbits moving around in Treebeard, and like they had a tough time with that. So pivoting off of that, because I don't need to go much more into Melina or Doc Ock, the visual effects to me really held up in this. And I had that as an early note of like, because in the first movie, especially swinging through the city felt weird.
Yep.
Like they couldn't quite figure it out.
Yep.
And that's never a problem in this movie. I no notes on the visual effects that they won, and maybe we'll watch something this year that will be like, how did this not win? But I mean, solid.
Yeah, it stands out in the like bank attack sequence.
Yeah.
Where they shift back between the practical and the digital
Yeah.
really, really well.
Yeah, and I like even when the car goes through the window of the of the when
like the cafe
or whatever, like that's also really cool. Like it comes out of nowhere and this car just comes through the window. They do a really good job of those, but the bank scene's good too.
No, I agree. When he's moving from inside the building and they go up, and it's a lot of effects up and down the side of the building.
Yeah.
And yes, there are times where I had the same notes. It felt like we were watching the Agent Smith attack sequence.
Yeah, but what are you going to do?
I mean, it's like they hadn't mastered that type of look yet. It was still very cartoony game effect type of look. But I agree. Like considering the time and place, that the action was, really, really effective. And yes, the digital effects really, really worked well. But
man, I have a suspicious feeling we're going to be very different on this movie now.
Probably.
Yeah.
I was surprised watching it.
Yeah. The first half, I was kind of feeling like, oh crap, are we like X-Men style here? Is this really?
I had the same thought.
Like,
is it going to be
X-Men? It's way better than that, but
sure.
Yeah.
But I was like,
I will say the first half was tough to watch. It was
really slow.
Yep.
And so to that point of like the effects and the feeling of it, good stuff was the train fight sequence.
Yeah.
Really top notch.
Really, yeah. Lots of really good sequences, actually. They have some good, solid sequences.
Yes.
Or action set pieces, I should say, including the finale.
Yeah, I agree. The action pieces really hold up. Even though, again, we were laughing watching it. Like, what are the civil engineers in New York doing?
Who just puts it at an end at, we're just going to end this at Central Park on Fifth Avenue. That's
exactly.
fine.
And like go off in the river.
That's fine.
It's going to be fine. This massive train sequence. Like, okay, cool. But it does.
But again, comic book movie.
It still has a lot of intensity to it as they're fighting up and down and like around the train sequence. It works.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I have more quibbles coming up, but what are some of the good things you liked about it?
Oh, are you asking me?
Yes.
One of the things I appreciate about it, and I think we appreciated at the time, I guess I have 2 points here. The hard part about rewatching these movies, is there's a pre-Iron Man and a post-Iron Man world of the MCU. And I can't... How can I fault this movie, or the first one, or the third one, or the Amazing, and like the other two, for something that came after?
Yep.
Like, I mean, I can't fault them on it.
Right?
I cannot look at this movie in the same lens as the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, which are a bit fan servicey, but they do a really good job. You can't compare them, but they're so different. Like they're just so different. This is much, to this movie's credit, and the first one especially. The third one goes off the rails a bit.
It does.
But these first two, they go out of their way as best as they can to be grounded in physical realism and like as local as they can. This is not a... I mean, I just said that. So I guess I should have said the first 5 Spider-Men were more about not worldwide things. Because literally in No Way Home, the entire multiverse is about to crash in on them. So at that point, we've gone bigger.
It goes crazy.
But, they go out of their way to make... And that's where Sam Raimi is so good, is he tries to do as much as he can within the lens without visual effects. Mm-hmm. So I have a hard time... It's like I can't fault this movie for what came after. That's not fair.
Sure.
You just can't do it.
Yep.
But the reality is the Spider-Man movies of Tom Holland are much, much, much more enjoyable and rewatchable.
Yes.
But they also learned from what came before. So, I mean, like, the modern Spider-Man can run because these movies had to walk, right? So, I guess on top of that is, back then, we have to remember what stood out, and I think what still stands out now, is of these comic book movies, these early X-Men, Spider-Man movies, this was kind of one of the first that really hammered home I have to sacrifice myself for what my life is secondary to those around me. I'm in a struggle. And even he says it, like, am I not allowed to have this? Can I not have these nice things or like a life around me? I have to live in squalor. And you just go, and I think that's where we related to it as in that era of that, like, early 20s or whatever, like, this guy's sacrificing for all this stuff. And I think that's where this movie did a good job of taking the first one, which was super cheesy in a lot of ways. And, we even made fun of it, I know, in the first time around. In particular, the Green Goblin, like, what does he say? Like, fat ass shit. Like, it's really badly written. And this one really does it's a much better written movie, in that sense. And that's one of the things I like, is that it really does a good job of saying, like, I have to give up what's bigger than me. And then it does pay off a bit where MJ says, bleep that, you have to give that up, but I have a choice in this too. Like, I get to be a part of this too.
Yes.
And so I think there's a really good part of that's separated itself from some of the others in this time. Well, are you only going to quibbles after this?
No.
I have a couple minor ones for sure, but I just...
So, I always will appreciate that, and we kind of take it for granted now, living so much in the MCU, of the reveal at the end, when he stands up and she sees him in full Spider-Man glory. I remember in the theater being like, holy shit.
It still kind of hits emotionally too now. Like, it did, Like, as not great of an actress as Kirsten Dunst can be.
She's not great in this. And
she talks like she's hiding a secret most of the time.
It is very, like, reserved.
She's kind of like, I don't even know how to, Anyway.
And I still will say, that emotional payoff still lands when
way better than Harry. Like,
yes,
we know Harry's coming, and James Franco's a fine actor, and he's got a few Oscar nominations. But he just didn't. He's just nothing in this movie to me.
Oh, really? I think he actually
he does fine, but I just am like, he does better than Kirsten Dunst. Don't get me wrong.
Yes, right.
But that's a low bar to beat. But I'm just saying,
I
like,
agree. He understood
that
the assignment.
reveal was like, I almost feel like from an acting perspective,
he drops the knife.
Yeah, that to me feels like an acting perspective. That's an easy scene.
Yes,
I think Kirsten Dunst is actually a harder scene.
Yes,
of like, I wanted it to be you.
I
knew
thought
it would
was.
be you, but
Yes.
maybe not. And I'm like, and she's got that look on her face. There's an emotional hit from her reaction.
Yes,
versus like Franco's reaction was like, oh, yeah, that's what I thought it would be.
Yeah, especially it's like you never thought that like your best friend somehow getting all the pictures of him was like easy. Yeah,
I'm more surprised that the Foley artist didn't like do the sheath sound when he dropped the knife. Let's just do 3 for 3. Yeah, ching ching ching.
So insane.
Sorry. Anyway,
yeah, I do. You know,
but that emotional
we
reveal,
appreciate it. I think still that when it's confirmed, she was definitely suspecting it. But when it's confirmed, it's like now it all clicks into place.
And it's earned. That is an earned reveal.
Yes.
That is not, because that scene is really good of Melina, Doc Ock kind of saving the day. And you kind of forget that MJ's there.
Yes.
Like, it's not like she was literally tossed off to the side.
She tried one moment.
Right, one moment. She tried, no. And it was funny. It was kind of good. And you forget that she's there, and it is earned because he turns around and he forgot that she was there.
Yes.
Didn't even think to hide himself or anything like that. And there she is, just like, so it's an earned reveal. I think they did a really good job with that one.
I agree. Because, Peter's all about trying to convince Doc Ock, like, you need to shut this down.
Yeah.
And, like, let's connect as scientists and, like, nerds, all these things. Yes.
Yeah. You think about the modern Spider-Man or Spider-Man movies where, like, MJ's just kind of like, oh, you're Spider-Man in the Mysterio, and like Far From Home.
I knew it was you.
I knew it was you. And it was funny, but you don't have the emotional hit that it did early on.
I totally agree. It was like
which is funny because they
point
had
of humor.
They were the third franchise Spider-Man, so they could be funny.
Yes. So I do have some quibbles.
I mean, I'm going to let you go off in your quibbles. I don't actually have too many. I don't believe this is a perfect Spider-Man movie or a perfect, superhero movie. I know my verdict will probably sound a little different, but like, I'm curious what your quibbles are.
So, do you think Tobey Maguire is perfectly cast because Peter needs to be awkward and a bit odd?
Mm-hmm.
Or do we just think that Maguire is not a very good actor?
I have never... Short of Pleasantville, I have never thought Tobey Maguire was a good actor.
Yeah.
He's fine in Seabiscuit. He's actually he's actually really good in Babylon more recently, as this really creepy dude. And he's really good as in the early part of Tropic Thunder, in those previews.
That's right.
When Tobey Maguire tries to be serious, and God help him if he tries to cry.
Exactly.
I don't believe he's a good actor.
He's not.
In a movie like this. And so I actually have always thought, and I think the modern No Way Home kind of made people think like, that's my Spider-Man, like the original, whatever.
He's good.
He's fine.
He pulls it off really well.
He's much better in No Way Home, though.
Yeah.
His best Spider-Man performance is in No Way Home.
He had to age like 15 years.
Right, because he was way older and he had he's gotten better. I don't know, man. I actually think to a certain extent it's not Tobey Maguire's fault. Because he is exactly who he was when he was hired onto this.
Yeah.
He was a young up-and-comer. He had a few indie hits under his belt, and we love Pleasantville here on this show.
Love it.
But from a writing perspective, they don't exactly give him some of the best like situations to be the actor that he could be.
Yes.
Because the best part of Seabiscuit is when he is angry and he is that like sort of like belligerent dude,
Yes.
So I don't know. I don't think he's that great of an actor, but I also don't blame him for the issues when it comes to this. I really think they put him in a poor position as a writing crew.
Like at the time, I don't know that I could have thought of a different actor, there clearly could have been, that would have been probably better.
Yeah. I mean,
but it's definitely one of those like, meh, when he's really called upon to like emote.
Yeah.
And do a lot of like when he has the scene where he's talking about Ben's death. I'm just like, you can't quite pull it off.
I don't know if it's like the fat lip thing he's got going or what.
Yeah.
Like he's just, there's nothing about it that you feel like.
Can't quite do it.
And no. And in the first movie too, when Ben dies, you're like, okay.
Yeah.
I want to look away from
stop
this.
crying.
Stop crying. Like,
Look
I'd
away.
I'd rather watch Ben die than watch your reaction to Ben dying. Like that's how bad this is. So I agree. Like that it's rough.
Another one. And this is actually, I think, more so after having watched Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness recently. I don't know that I think Sam Raimi is a very good director.
Oh.
Like, he has... I think back to, like, Evil Dead.
A
And
major
Army of
film
Darkness.
director, maybe.
Like, he those movies really still hold up. They're funny.
Yeah.
And they're great. But it's when he gets into these, like, really spectacle-driven action at times, and not to say that the action doesn't work for this, but
right.
I just don't know. I'm on the fence when it comes to Sam Raimi as a like professional, solid director. And this, watching again, is like, yikes. The first half, again, I struggled with, and there's times I don't know. I haven't seen one that I feel like that is better because of Sam Raimi.
Well, I mean, if you have to, outside of the horror genre.
Yeah.
I could kind of get behind this. You know what I mean? Because you got to kind of take those two out of there. But then the reverse is similar to, oh my God, I'm suddenly blanking on his name. Jon Favreau with Iron Man.
Sure.
Jon Favreau's not that great of a director. Like he's fine. He's a serviceable director. There's nothing about him that's like, you got to get Jon Favreau in this.
That's true.
When it came to who are you going to get to bring, you weren't going to get any major directors, right? So you had to kind of find somebody. And I think Sam Raimi, actually, I'll actually reverse this a little. My initial thought. We don't think Chris Columbus is particularly a great director, but you can't argue that without Chris Columbus, there is no Harry Potter franchise. And I think from a Sam Raimi perspective, there's a bit of that to say maybe without Sam Raimi, you needed somebody who had enough cred or like enough experience to be able to handle the budget was way higher, but could still do some things with some practical things.
Yep.
That works for it. If I could go back and retcon it a bit, maybe I'd find a different director or whatever. But at the time, what I will say is Sam Raimi should not have directed Spider-Man 3.
Correct.
That's where I will say, like, Spider-Man 3, somebody else should have taken the reins.
Yeah.
It got over the top. It was too much. The whole thing just went off the rails.
Yeah.
But 1 and 2, I would back Sam Raimi on these movies.
And that's a great comparison to Columbus. With
he did
Harry
1 and
Potter.
2.
Yeah.
We don't think they're great movies necessarily.
No.
These are better than those two movies.
Absolutely.
But
to build a world and have it, all right, okay. I was like, it wasn't sitting right for me.
Yeah, but I don't think there's anything in this film that I would say, oh, if only they had gotten other director to do this would have been better.
Sure.
I don't think that's a Raimi problem necessarily. I think that's much more of a writing problem. And this, again, from a modern lens standpoint, nobody back then had any idea that you should be able to, or you should be, we talked about it watching it. They made this movie and they had Connors, they had Professor Connors, who is a main villain in these movies, and he never shows up except in The Amazing Spider-Man later on with another, like they have that. And then he's on Bleecker Street, which is another. And then they even talk about how there is a Doctor Strange is taken. And we have no idea. Like they're making these really fun Easter eggy references, but without the understanding of saying, what if we tied in future?
Sure.
And so the Kevin Feige's of the world who said, no, we're actually going to tie all this stuff together. that was not thought of at this time.
Yeah.
So it's
That's
like
appreciation.
now we think back on it, you'd be like, oh my God, what would have happened if they had done this?
Yes.
You
Could've been
know,
that, or-
because now that guy, I can't even remember his name, who was Connors, he's like the bad guy in the what's the Al Pacino on
Hunters.
The Hunters.
Yes.
He's in that. You know, you're kind of like, that's like 18 years later, and he's still a bad guy. You know, he could have been a good bad guy. So I do think like there's a lot of this stuff that we think back, and you're like, oh, if only it could have been this.
Yeah.
And I don't think Raimi is one of them. I don't think Sam Raimi should be.
No.
I don't think they should have had him on Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness.
Agreed.
I don't mind that movie actually, but I don't think they should have had Sam Raimi there.
No.
That felt very forced.
And
like
the
maybe they had a
visuals-
contract with him that was like, we got to get you one more movie. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, I guess we'll throw you in for this one.
Yeah.
So,
what else you got?
Last minor quibble.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
Well,
Peter,
because I just destroyed your last one.
So Peter can't afford to pay rent.
Yeah, of course.
He's unemployed, so has no insurance, and yet can somehow pay to go visit the doctor.
Those are free clinics. He had a tie-dye shirt on, Tim. That was clearly a hippie doctor.
It was my watch. Like maybe it's like adult of like.
Did you not see?
How is he
had a
paying for
tie-dye
this
shirt
doctor?
on. No. That was clearly a free clinic.
It was such a dumb scene of like, hey doc, I'm having these weird dreams of being Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not really him, but what if I was? And I was like, oh god,
Yeah.
like
Not great writing.
no.
What I mean, we're not talking about
That's
like
my last quibble.
we've talked about other comic movies with Ted Rossio and I can't remember who. You know, we like this is what did I say they were? It was
Yeah, what are their names? I forget.
yeah, exactly. Written by Steve Ditko and Alfred Gough, Gough. Clearly not our, you know.
Yeah, they've written so much.
I didn't even look at him. I don't care. Like, I just
that sequence. I was like, oh, this is so stupid. Like, you're not a therapist or a psychiatrist. But whatever, doc. Sure. Here, where's my bill? Yeah, free.
My biggest problem with really any of these three movies is that there is no, and I mean no, zero chemistry between Tobey Maguire and Kristen Dunst in their characters.
Absolutely. Yes.
These are, if you go, and here is, again, if you have, because Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, chemistry.
Yes.
I mean, clearly, because they were also banging it out off screen. But then you get Tom Holland and Zendaya also banging it out off
That's
screen.
that's
like,
the secret.
That's the secret
right there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nothing. Enough of this Jesse Plemons bullshit, Kristen. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't.
Yeah,
there
it's
is nothing
tough.
between those two.
No.
There's nothing. It's like, okay, we only want it because I'm supposed to want it. Like I'm supposed to, right? Like the chemist, like there's just nothing between them.
Nope.
And so when there is the cafe scene and this kind of stuff, there's no emotional connection whatsoever in this movie.
Yeah, like when he tells her to her face, I don't love you.
Yeah.
If it was chemistry, it'd be heartbreaking.
Yeah, nothing.
You're like, man, all right.
Okay, yeah. As much as the payoff is good in terms of her finding out.
Yes.
But even then, running to him at the end and the wedding dress and that kind of stuff, you would normally be like just like swirling music and like, oh my god, this is so wonderful. And you're like, meh, okay. There's just nothing between those two.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if it's writing, but it's really those two. Like Kristen Dunst made sense from a casting perspective because she was like super hot. She's very pretty. She also doesn't wear bras. And like
not a thing for her.
It is. And then Tobey Maguire was kind of an indie, whatever. And then James Franco, like, I can't fault the casting directors for their choices.
Yeah.
But there's nothing between them.
No.
I mean, we're talking like in this is like Anakin Skywalker and Padme. There's nothing between them.
Completely agree.
Like there's like I don't care about that.
It's just a story device.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, okay. So that's what really loses me on this.
Yes.
So that's my actually biggest quibble / frustration with these movies is like, meh, I don't care about you.
Yeah. I totally agree. And that's a huge drawback of this movie now, looking back at it, where you're expecting like, okay, this huge love story that was built upon the first one. Now it's like, meh. And the reveal is great. But yes, it's a great call out where that's probably some of the slow part of it. It's just like, what? Who? This back and forth. And oh, she's engaged to somebody else. I don't care. I don't care.
Well, and that was the problem too, right? She's kind of like flirting with him, and then she leaves, and is like, "Oh, by the way, I'm seeing somebody." Be like, what?
You're so mysterious. Hey, buddy, what's going on?
Hands on my face, trying to like almost make out with me. Oh, by the way, I'm
and it's your birthday. Sorry, I'm with somebody else. It might be serious. Bye.
Yeah. And I mean, Kristen Dunst can be a good actress. She was just nominated for an Oscar 2 years ago. Like, I get it. It's fine. But just for whatever reason, they just don't mesh in this movie.
I agree.
There's just none of that. So,
that's all you got.
That's all you got?
Yep.
I mean, I think that's about all I got. I definitely like this movie way more than you do, probably, in terms of...
Yeah, it didn't hold up like I thought.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I think maybe I'm thinking of it more in a... I really went into it not trying to compare. Like, I'm trying to remember it as a, like, what it was. And part of that is, and spoiler, we'll talk about in Garden State a little bit, is... It's not the movie's job to age with me.
Sure.
I have to look back at what it was at the time.
Yep.
Like that's not their job.
Yep.
They had to make a movie at this
snapshot in time.
And at this time, we were creaming our pants because we didn't know what could be.
Yes.
And this was the first sort of step towards building off of a good movie.
Yep.
Enjoyable, good start. We talked about, and then saying like, no. Now there's these depths of these characters and there's more to it. It wasn't until this was in 2004. It was another 4 years till Iron Man comes out that we start this. And even Iron Man wasn't like that kind of depth. It really wasn't for another almost 10 years before we really start discovering what that could be.
Yeah.
You know, so I can't quite fault this movie for not being what would come later on down the road. I mean, it's tough.
I agree. It's a mixed emotional reaction for me. In terms of what I appreciate when it came out, and then now watching it and being like,
yeah, I would not put it in the top 5.
No,
right? I definitely think X2 holds up better. We talked about last year, definitely, but that also doesn't have the emotional love story or whatever, and you know, so
I'm going up there. I'm going to try it. I'm going to let the jury decide.
As we close out our spotlight segment, we come to our final takes called The Verdict.
If we are to have faith and justice, we need only to believe in ourselves.
This is where Tim and I give our final verdicts after rewatching the film and decide whether or not the movie held up over the course of 2 decades.
Now you get out of here before I call the bailiff and have you thrown in jail.
This is The Verdict.
I said to hell with it, to hell with it.
So, Spider-Man 2, it's a comic book film that elevated the genre at the time. And I think it deserves appreciation for that. Yet somehow, as we talked about, seems extremely outdated and downright slow 20 years later as the industry has dramatically passed it by. But I will say I appreciate the impact it had in 2004. But I was super surprised at how disappointed I was watching it now. Solid digital and practical effects, plus a very compelling performance by Molina as a really, really solid villain, quote unquote. Good guy who became somewhat a villain in Doc Ock. Elevates the material, or what was kind of just okay. Yet outside of the last, like, probably 40 minutes, overall the movie really felt flat for me watching it now. 3 out of 5 for me.
There you go. All right, well, my verdict, Spider-Man 2, somewhat like X2 the year prior, separated itself from the comic book genre at the time by doing something that many others failed to do, which is humanize the superhuman characters. We see the struggle that Peter must go through with this responsibility that has been thrust upon him, and the realization that the life he wanted is likely not the life he can have. Yet, through that, he finds acceptance and even joy for what that this new life can represent. Like the best in comic books, our heroes go through the same things that we mere mortals do. And I think Spider-Man 2 achieves this better than many other films, especially at that time. With visuals that certainly hold up, and a great anti-hero performance from Molina. Yeah. That's the word you're looking for.
That's what that word.
Spider-Man 2 stands out above the rest from this time period. And I think it's still really great when you consider that.
Mm-hmm.
I have 4 out of 5. In particular, we have seen some really shitty digital performances from this time frame. So you got to give them some credit there. But I have 4 out of 5.
Nice.
Come on, not my beer.
With our reactions and verdicts to the movie out of the way, we move on to the reactions to our beers that we drank while rewatching our subject movie.
And if you want to have sex with a disgusting bad brewer with a terrible attitude,
this is where we take a look back at our beers and give our expert ratings for our drinking buddies.
ugh, whatever. Hey, here's the truth.
This is Drinking Buddies.
Let's get weird.
We started with Steel Toe out of Plymouth, Minneapolis, Minnesota.
St. Louis Park.
St. Louis Park. There we go. Samsonite. I was way off. Their Hop Shady Hazy IPA. For me, it was like a 3.75.
Yep.
It started really strong, smelled really great. And then as I went along, it was kind of like, meh.
That's on my Hinge profile. Starts strong, smells really great.
Smells really great.
But then
And
trails
then
off at the end.
Becomes kind of meh as it goes along.
It's a big meh.
It was fine. I just was like, okay.
Yeah, 3.75 as well for me. I mean, Steel Toe. The one thing I appreciate about Steel Toe is their IPAs are as good as it gets in town.
Absolutely.
Once you get off of that, you're like, it's fine.
Yeah.
They have the Descent, I think, is their stout, right? Is good.
That's very good.
But their sours are fine. Everything else is fine. They're good. But when it comes to IPAs, it's good. So that's why I have 3.75 as well, because I'm like, they're IPAs, they're double IPAs, triple IPAs.
Yeah, size 11.
Best in town, right?
Yeah.
Or some of the best in town. And then you go hazy, you're like, you just miss. Everything else is just misses. But I have 3.75. I mean, if I were to have this in a tap room, I'd be like, that's fine. It's good. It's good.
And then somewhat theme
there
beer. Spider-Man 2.
Again, we didn't talk about this earlier. This is a last minute recording, so this was as best as we could do.
We were like, we got about an hour to figure this out.
Thankfully, the lightning came through. We had more time.
It worked out.
Yeah.
Duel. Sometimes I'm like Two Citizen.
Sure.
Good.
And Spider-Man is a good citizen
of the exactly. Oh, I like that even better. Dual citizen of I guess right in the middle of Minneapolis, St. Paul. They're
St. Paul,
Dreaming IPA. It's like a Pacific Northwest. Ooh, different style IPA. We're getting very regionally specific.
Yeah, exactly.
Citrus pine. Actually, I had a 4.25 for me. Yeah.
Wow.
I really liked the bite on this, and it was a nice. Maybe it was after the Steel Toe, but it was a solid option for me. I really enjoyed this one. Good, kind of like the pine citrusy like West Coast style really came through.
It was good. I mean, if I have 3.75 out of 5, but then I'm not a huge Dual Citizen fan.
Sure.
So I'd be like, I guess it would probably bump it a little more if I had to compare it to the others. I liked it better than the Steel Toe Hazy, but not enough to jump at another rating.
Sure.
But again, it was good.
Yeah.
I got nothing more than that.
There's a heavy IPA night.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
Last minute, we're like, let's get some stuff. And then we had Bad Habit out of St. Joseph, Minnesota. They're Distracted by Fun West Coast IPA. For me, it was a 3.5, actually. It's fine. And I don't know if it's just a disappointment relative to what they've done out of Bad Habit, but it was just good. It was like, okay. I didn't have as much of the like West Coast bite.
No.
Like I would have thought, like relative to the one before. But no, it was fine for me.
You and I are a little bit different tonight, which is interesting. I think I liked it better than Dual Citizen, which I liked better than Steel Toe Hazy. So I was like, well, I got to go 4.
We gotta go 4,
right?
yeah.
I mean, I had to go 4.
The logic follows. Yep.
Yeah. And we know my bias towards Bad Habit. I can't argue that one way or another. The difference, like, I love. So when we get like a Drecker or, what's the other one from up in that area?
Junkyard.
Junkyard or whatever. They all taste the same.
Yeah.
You open it,
different
it tastes the
packaging,
same, right?
Yep.
And what I love about Bad Habit, and actually Steel Toe for this on an IPA standpoint, when I open it, I know it's going to be quality. It's going to be quality.
Yeah.
It might not match what you're talking about over your expectations.
Yeah.
But I could tell immediately it was a higher quality than the Dual Citizen. It tasted more refreshing. It just had a better taste to it to me. And I was like, it's a 4. I mean, it's really well done.
Wow.
I love it. So,
good.
I mean, it's absolutely not their best by any means.
No.
They got 10 beers better than this. But I had a 4 out of 5.
And then we ended with Elm Creek out of Champlin, Minnesota, their bottom dollar West Coast IPA. Again, all about the bitter hops on West Coast.
It was an IPA night.
It worked out. It was a 3.75 for me. It was a nice one to end on. It was a nice, like, good bite to it.
Yeah.
It was solid.
Elm Creek has a lot of really good beers, and this is not necessarily one of them. I mean, I have a 375 as well, because you haven't been there, right?
I have not been there, but we've had some of those stuff.
Yeah. It's in a former Ruby Tuesdays. It's really kind of weird.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's kind of weird. It's like you walk in, you're like, it's almost like Perkins back in high school. You walk in. But anyway, I had 375 as well. It's good, but it's not like, oh my God, it's really good.
Get this,
It was definitely, I thought it was worse than Bad Habit, so I went back down.
Gotcha.
But a solid average night of beer.
It was good.
All of these beers, if you were to walk into your local liquor store or a brewery, you'd be like, oh, I'll have that. Give me a pint.
And then in honor of
yes, here we go,
our 100th podcast episode.
Yeah.
Which when we started this, it was such a like, let's see how this goes.
All right. Yeah.
Let's manage the pandemic insanity.
And 4 years later.
And when we were talking about, like the 100th, and I was at the store today, and I was looking through this massive list of the, tracking what we've had before. It was weird to look at, despite how much we go, oh, I wish we could just quit you.
Every time.
Surly's
Especially
Darkness.
This. Yeah. Yep.
Their standard flagship Imperial Stout, probably like the OG in the cities.
From a stout standpoint.
From an Imperial
sure,
Stout.
Really anything in town.
Like Darkness
Furious,
Days.
This. Yep.
All these options really started because of Surly with Darkness. And God damn it.
I know. It's good.
And when they moved it from the big bombers into cans, I was always a little worried that it wouldn't quite hold up. But this is from last year, and it's so good. It's a 4.5 for me.
I have 4 or 5 as well.
It's just so damn good.
I mean, the technology has come a long way when it comes to canning. That it
can age.
Right. It can age better. It's not, you don't get the tinny flavor to it.
Yep.
In some ways, the bottle is better, but it's also a pain in the ass to store.
Absolutely.
So I do like it. Yeah, I agree. I have a 4.5 out of 5. Yeah, I mean, later this year, we'll kind of talk about our 4th anniversary or whatever, but it's like,
there's something about the 100.
Yeah, it is. It's like, which is odd because this is our 99th recording.
Carry the one.
Yeah, well, yeah. We're gonna it's our 99th recording and 100th release, and we'll talk about that a little bit in our happy hour. But
we'll play with it a little bit. Back
it's great, man.
It's so good.
Well, cheers to 100.
Cheers, man.
Yeah.
And thank you for listening. But cheers.
Yes. 11 or 12 of you, you're keeping our hobby going.
It's a good monthly hobby.
Oh wait, who am I shouting out again? Your coworker?
Lindsay.
Lindsay, yes. Thanks for listening.
Yes.
I was like, I couldn't remember. We try and shout out people.
Yeah,
I always
tracking
talk about
our
JT
like
and
people that
Brandon
love
and
it.
other
Yep.
people, and you don't shout people out. So there we go.
No, I don't like to shout out people.
I don't like to admit that I have people in my life.
They know who they are.
Yes, exactly.
But yes, thank you for listening. It's good.
The exciting quiz program 21.
Our final segment of the episode is Quiz Show.
I've stood on the shoulders of life, and I've never gotten down into the dirt to build.
Where in our research for our subject film, we find some interesting trivia nuggets that we hope will stump the other and possibly intrigue you.
This is not McCarthyism. We're not here to expose for the sake of exposure.
This is Quiz Show.
Well, evidently certain of the contestants were given the answers in advance.
Cheating on a quiz show. It's like plagiarizing a comic strip.
So with our extensive research,
yes, I was gonna say, we already talked about an hour and a half before we started recording. We were like, should we record tonight? We weren't planning on it. How many did you end up while we were recording, Tim?
I have 2.
I have 3.
Nice.
But I don't know. One of them's kind of like a last minute, but they're all kind of similar. So
That's fine.
I will go
You
first.
go first.
Then. Okay. All right. The Marvel movies are famous for their cameos, especially from creator Stan Lee, who is in this as just a guy dodging some debris along the way. Debris! Tim's now concussed.
Oh, gosh.
However, there are other times when famous people make appearances throughout the entire series, sometimes behind masks of their own. In the really well done surgery scene that you talked about, one of the doctors is actually played by an all-time great director and a friend of Raimi. What classic comedy director, mainly of films from the 80s and 90s, made a very brief cameo behind a surgical mask? And here's the thing. I can't tell you the movies, and I can't show you a picture because you'd be like, oh, I get it.
From the 80s and
90s. And maybe I'll give you a hint, but I like the wrong buzzer. So
no, that works.
Did I say comedies? I'll give you comedies. A comedy director of the 80s and 90s. Spielberg is not in this movie.
No. Zucker.
I mean, there you go.
Maybe you're talking about Naked Gun. I have no idea.
John Landis is actually in this movie.
Why do I know that name?
Oh my God.
John Landis.
Yeah.
I feel
like Stripes or is that Stripes? Yeah, that's Stripes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and you're like, if I were to show you a picture, Animal House, I think is John Landis too, or
all those. Okay.
Right. Anyway, off the top of my head, I can't remember his movies, but John Landis, you'd be like here, I'll show you a picture of him. Now that I'm, Anyway.
No, you just, I'll be able to look him up here.
Oh yeah, you got your fancy computer.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right. Once you look at it, yeah, and then if you also Google search John Landis Spider-Man 2, it's literally him in a mask being like.
Yep.
Oh, okay, there he is.
Yeah, but
I can't tell you.
No,
you know what I mean. Like, I couldn't do it, but yeah, John Landis makes a very brief cameo in this movie.
I love when I Google that, and the first thing that comes is Reddit. The best part of Spider-Man 2 is when John Landis gets nailed.
What are his other movies? Do you have it on there?
Let me go back to John Landis.
I'm just kind of curious for those of you who haven't.
You're right. Animal House, Coming to America, Trading Places, Blues Brothers.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, Trading
Comedy
Places
Legends.
is outstanding.
I've never seen that, actually.
Oh, mother of God.
I know.
If we had more time, I would start another podcast that was films Tim hasn't seen. But
introducing Tim to classics.
Yes, all pre-1985.
Oh, that one. Oh, yeah, he directed Thriller.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yep. Hey, speaking of MJ the Musical.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, that's right. Okay, that's good.
There you
go. Very, very well done. So, Alfred Molina, who we wax poetic about.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, Tim.
That is my yes.
Is that your?
What was his screen?
No,
debut?
you're not really. Oh,
it is
low hanging fruit.
I had no idea. Honestly, I thought he had something before, but I was looking through him like,
no, it was
his screen debut was Raiders.
Yeah, what a long career, like to get to
like 5 decades.
Yeah, and you end up with like Boogie Nights and Magnolia, and then he ends up getting nominated for an Oscar for Frida. And like this kind of stuff, but really kind of under the radar for the better part of 24 years.
He's just fantastic.
And then he ends up in this movie.
Yes.
Like, talk about just...
And he's he's like the British Cliff Curtis.
Yeah.
Where it's like, he will play any type of ethnicity.
Yeah. Yeah, he is. Look at it. Look through his IMDb. He's got like 200 credits to his name, too.
It's insane what he's able to do.
Yeah, good for him.
Yes, yeah.
And he's also great. Like, he's just good at...
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing you will never hear, we talked about this with Walton Goggins when it came to Fallout, you know what I mean? The one thing you will never hear is Alfred Molina is bad at this.
I was underwhelmed.
Yeah. It was like, meh, he's okay.
Yeah.
It started to just jump on your
Raiders
typing out. I jokingly said, I was like, okay. Well, there we go. I was right.
Yep.
Okay. So Mary Jane Watson's co-star in The Importance of Being Earnest, the woman.
I've seen her face, but dang it.
Yeah, you have. Was portrayed by Vanessa Ferlito. Ferlito had roles in films such as 25th Hour, which we had covered on here, and Wall Street Money Never Sleeps, as well as many TV roles over the last 20 years. But she actually was featured. She was a featured player in a special double feature that we have talked about on this show. What double feature did she have a role in?
Grindhouse?
Yeah, she was in Grindhouse. She was also in Death Proof, actually.
Yeah, she's
but that's
one of the...
not in. Yeah, she's in Death Proof, but then Grindhouse is the other two films, which I mistakenly did that the last time. Yeah, so she's in both of those, which we talked about recently.
Oh, nice.
That's where you saw her. Because I saw her, I was like, mother effer, where are you from?
I've seen her before.
She was also in 24 for 2 seasons. So
that's right.
Yep.
Yes. All right. So while it was screenwriting credits went to the two gentlemen you mentioned before,
Goff and I don't know, Steve something or other.
The story was conceived by, I think he's in the opening credits, Michael Chabon or Chabon, I'm not sure, a author who won the 2001 Pulitzer Prize for his comic book themed book set in the 1940s as a homage to the original DC comics and these stories. What book did he write in 2000 that won that Pulitzer Prize? And I only mentioned...
I know the name and I know everything. I'm just trying to picture the book. Like,
oh, good for you.
What were you going to say?
I only mention it because it is truly one of the greatest books I've ever read. It's phenomenal in terms of just a great story through the lens of like up and coming, struggling comic book writers in the 40s.
What's that mouse?
No, that's oh gosh, that's
also really good.
That's really good. Yeah, that graphic novel.
I can actually picture the cover too. Like I'm looking at it in my brain, like of just from our Barnes and Noble days.
Yep.
What do you got?
The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay.
Yeah.
You blew it.
Truly, listener, if you are looking for a book, you will need to have a thesaurus next to you. Because I like to think I like obscure words.
Yeah.
I was reading like, what is that word?
The first half of our episodes were Tim finding obscure
new vocab word. And if you wanted that one, that's the one. It's so good. It's so damn good.
He's done other things too, so good for him.
He's good. So
I didn't even notice that. It was in the credits?
Yep. Opening credits, like the two writers and then but
all right.
His story credit
on my phone. I'm just going to throw this in because I'm going to talk about this movie. But Bill Nunn plays Robbie, the assistant editor at the Bugle under J. Jonah Jameson.
Okay.
Robbie is the only fan of Spider-Man.
Yep.
Right? He is in many movies and TV shows, but in what classic 1992 Whoopi Goldberg comedy does he portray Eddie the cop?
Sister Act?
Yeah. I just want to talk about... Yeah.
That movie's so damn
it's
good.
So good.
It's
so good. It never gets old.
It's so good.
Any chance I can, I will talk about... Because I was actually going to talk about Maverick, because Alfred Molina's in Maverick, and we just talked about that in 1994.
Holy shit.
I know. Molina's in Maverick.
Wow.
Yeah, man. We rewatched the 94 movies. Like, oh, man. Yeah. I had to bring up Sister Act.
It's fantastic.
Oh, my God. Yeah. It's just,
it's phenomenal.
No notes. Like, it's so good.
Yes.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the episode. Be sure to find all of our previous episodes on your favorite streaming platforms.
All
and watch
99.
out. Yeah, 99. And watch out for upcoming episodes on Collateral and Dodgeball, as well as, I guess, now our happy hour coming up on... What,
from before.
I know. I'm like,
you can't play.
Yeah. All right. I guess I wrote that down the right way. All right. Find
Thank
us
you
on
for
the web.
listening to the previous episode
Yes,
of
I know.
Garden State.
It's so weird. Find us on the web via the metaverse of Facebook, Instagram, and Threads, and head to 20years4beers.com for more info. I guess I also, if you want to reach out to me on us on those things, I guess I'll respond.
Yep.
We want to say thank you for taking the time to listen, and for clicking that like or subscribe button on your devices. This has been 20 Years 4 Beers. My name is Steve.
I'm Tim.
And thanks for listening. Debris! Tim's now concussed. Ching, ching, ching.
So insane. They know who they are.
About 30 minutes
No,
in.
no, no.
About 30 minutes
I waited
in.
like it was like maybe like an hour. Thank you very much.
Well, cheers to 100.
Cheers, man. And thank you for listening. But cheers.
Yes. 11 or 12 of you, you're keeping our hobby going.